I thought I heard breathing in the walls, but it was coming from inside me the entire time. The apartment on Fairmont Street was the kind of place you took because you couldn't afford to be picky. Fifth floor, no elevator. Plaster walls so thin I could hear Mrs. Chen coughing 3 units down. The landlord, a sweating bulk of a man named Grease, handed me the keys with fingers that smelled like cigarettes and something else. Something medicinal and wrong. He didn't mention the closet. Nobody ever mentioned the closet. I moved in on a Tuesday. 3 boxes of books, a futon mattress I dragged up the stairs myself, some clothes still damp from the laundromat. The previous tenant had left in a hurry, Greaves said. Family emergency. But when I asked if I could get a forwarding address to return some mail, he just stared at me with these wet, red-rimmed eyes and said the family didn't want to be contacted. Ever. The closet was in the bedroom. Small space, maybe 4 feet wide, built into the wall opposite the single window that looked out over the fire escape. It had one of those old sliding doors, the kind that moved on a track with a soft rattling sound. I didn't think much of it at first. Just another closet. I hung my jackets inside, stacked some shoes on the floor, and closed the door. That first night I couldn't sleep. Not because of noise, the opposite. The apartment was too quiet. Even in a building this old, this populated, there should have been something. Footsteps above, pipes groaning, traffic from the street below. But there was nothing. Just this thick, cottony silence that pressed against my eardrums until they ached. I lay on the futon staring at the ceiling, counting water stains. 23. I counted them 4 times to make sure. At some point, I must have drifted off because I woke suddenly with my heart hammering and my mouth full of copper taste. The bedroom was darker than it should have been. The streetlight outside the window usually casts this orange glow across the floor, but now everything was black, like something had covered the glass. The closet door was open, just a crack, maybe 6 inches. I remembered closing it. I was certain I'd closed it. But there it was, slightly ajar, and from inside came the faintest sound, breathing, not labored or ragged, just slow, steady inhalations and exhalations, the way someone breathes when they're trying very hard to stay quiet. I told myself it was the building settling, old wood expanding and contracting, air moving through the walls. I told myself a lot of things that night, but I didn't get up to close the door. I stayed on the futon, covers pulled to my chin like a child, and I watched that thin vertical shadow until my eyes burned and morning light finally crept through the window. The next day, I went to work. I stocked shelves at a pharmacy on Lambert Avenue, scanning barcodes and smiling at customers who never looked at my face. My supervisor, Rita, asked if I was feeling okay. I looked tired, she said. Pale. I told her I was fine, just adjusting to the new place. She nodded but didn't seem convinced. When I got home that evening, the closet door was wide open. I stood in the doorway of the bedroom, grocery bag in one hand, keys in the other, and I stared. My jackets were still hanging inside. My shoes were still on the floor, but they were arranged differently. The jackets had been pushed to one side, creating this empty space in the center, and the shoes were lined up in a perfect row, toes pointing outward, like someone had spent time organizing them. I approached slowly. The floor creaked under my weight, and the sound seemed too loud, too sharp. I reached for the door, intending to slide it shut, when I noticed the smell, faint at first, then stronger. It was organic. Decay mixed with something sweeter, like spoiled milk left in the sun. I gagged, covering my nose with my sleeve, and slammed the door closed. I didn't open it again for 3 days. I wore the same clothes to work. I didn't care. Rita noticed, but she didn't say anything this time. Just gave me these long, pitying looks that made my skin crawl. At night, I slept on the futon with all the lights on, bathroom door open, kitchen light blazing. The electric bill would be insane, but I didn't care about that either. On the third night, I woke to the sound of crying, soft, female. It was coming from the closet, muffled behind the door like someone had pressed their face into fabric to muffle the sound. I sat up, every muscle in my body locked tight. The crying continued, not hysterical, not desperate, just sad. The kind of crying you do when you've given up on anyone hearing you. I should have left. I should have grabbed my phone, walked out, and never come back. But instead, I stood. My legs moved on their own, carrying me across the room. My hand reached for the door. My fingers curled around the edge. I slid it open. The smell hit me first. That same sour, rotting sweetness, but concentrated now, thick enough to taste. I gagged, eyes watering, but I didn't step back. I couldn't, because standing in the center of the closet, illuminated by the harsh light from the living room, was a figure, a woman, white dress. Stained along the hem with something dark and crusted, but it wasn't her clothes that made my throat close. It was her head. Heads, two of them emerging from the same neck, fused together in a way that violated every law of anatomy I could imagine. The skin where they joined was stretched thin, almost translucent, and I could see the pulse of blood beneath, twin heartbeats out of sync. The left head was crying, eyes closed, tears streaming down pale cheeks, mouth open in the silent, endless sob. The right head was staring at me, not blinking, just staring, and it was smiling, lips pulled back to show teeth too white, too perfect. I tried to scream. Nothing came out. My lungs wouldn't work. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, arms hanging limp at its sides, too long, fingers brushing the floor. I stumbled backward, hit the futon, fell hard on my tailbone. Pain shot up my spine, snapping me out of the paralysis. I scrambled up, ran to the door, grabbed the handle, locked. I didn't remember locking it. I twisted the deadbolt, yanked it open, and bolted into the hallway. I didn't stop until I reached the stairwell, where I collapsed against the wall, gasping, retching, bile burning my throat. I stayed there until morning. A neighbor, an older man in a bathrobe, found me around 6. He asked if I was drunk. I told him I was fine. He didn't believe me, but he left me alone. I went back to the apartment when the sun was fully up. The closet door was closed. I didn't open it. I called in sick to work. Rita sounded annoyed, but I didn't care. I sat on the futon, staring at the door, waiting for it to open again. It didn't. Not that day. Not the next. By the end of the week, I'd almost convinced myself it had been a hallucination. Stress, exhaustion, something I ate. The mind does strange things when it's pushed too far. I started sleeping again. Not well, but enough. I even opened the closet once, just a quick glance to confirm it was empty. It was. But that night I woke choking. There were no hands on my throat. No weight on my chest. Just this crushing pressure, like the air had turned solid and was forcing itself down my windpipe. It clawed at my neck, gasping, vision spotting with black dots. The pressure eased, suddenly, and I sucked in a ragged breath. From the closet came a sound, wet, rhythmic, breathing, but not human. Too slow, too deep, and underneath it a voice. The crying head, I realized, it was whispering. My name, over and over, the way my mother used to when I was a child, when I had nightmares, when she'd sit on the edge of my bed and stroke my hair and tell me everything would be okay. The smiling head spoke next, calm, patient. It told me exactly how I would die. It described the angle my neck would break, the sound my vertebrae would make, the way my eyes would bulge as the oxygen was cut off. It spoke like it was reading from a manual, clinical and detached, and I listened because I couldn't stop listening. Every night after that, something changed. Small things at first. The closet seemed closer to the bed. I measured it once using a belt, 9 feet. The next night, 8 feet. I measured again, certain I'd made a mistake. 7 feet and 11 inches. The walls weren't moving. The room wasn't shrinking, but the closet was arriving, inch by inch, by night. My body started changing too. My neck ached constantly, a deep throb that radiated down into my shoulders. I pressed my fingers against the vertebrae and felt them shift under the skin, grinding against each other like stones. In the mirror, I saw bruises forming, dark purple spreading across my throat in patterns that looked almost deliberate, almost like fingers. I found white fibers in my mouth, thin strands like thread stuck between my teeth. I didn't remember eating anything fabric. I pulled them out, held them up to the light. They were soft, almost silky, and they smelled like the closet. I threw them away, but the next morning there were more. I stopped going to work. Rita called twice, then stopped. I stopped answering the door when Greaves came knocking about the rent. I stopped eating, mostly because I couldn't keep anything down. My stomach rejected everything except water, and even that came back up half the time. The closet was 5 feet from the bed. I could hear them now even during the day. The crying head sobbing softly, the smiling head humming, a tuneless melody that burrowed into my skull and played on repeat. I tried to leave the apartment once, made it as far as the hallway before my legs gave out. I crawled back inside and the door swung shut behind me. 4 feet. I started finding things, small objects that weren't mine. A hairbrush with long black strands tangled in the bristles, a photograph, edges burned, showing a woman in a white dress standing in front of a building I didn't recognize. A wedding ring, gold band, tarnished green. I put them in a drawer, but they reappeared on the nightstand, arranged in a neat row. 3 feet. I could see them through the crack in the door now. The two heads, one crying, one smiling, watching me. Their arms were impossibly long, draped over the hanging rod, fingers twitching. When I turned off the light, I could still see them, glowing faintly. Phosphorescent. 2 feet. I woke standing at the edge of the bed, toes touching the closet door. I had no memory of getting up. My hand was raised, fingers spread like I'd been about to knock. I stepped back, but my legs didn't obey properly. They moved in jerking, mirroring emotions, muscles contracting without my permission. 1 foot. I stopped sleeping, couldn't risk it, but my eyes would close anyway, just for a second, and I'd snap awake to find myself closer, inches from the door, breath fogging the wood. Once, I woke with my palm pressed flat against it, and I felt warmth on the other side, a pulse, matching my own. The night it happened, I didn't fight. I was too tired, too broken. The closet was right there, door open, and I could see them clearly now. The woman, the heads, the fused neck, the 2 long arms. The crying head was looking at me now, eyes open, red and swollen. The smiling head's grin had widened impossibly, splitting the cheeks. I stood. I walked 3 steps. I was inside, wrought in sweetness and something else, something I recognized but couldn't name. Their arms wrapped around me, cold and damp, pulling me close. I felt their breath on my face, on my neck. The crying head pressed its cheek against mine, tears soaking my skin. The smiling head leaned in, lips brushing my ear. They bent my head, slowly, gently, almost lovingly. I felt the vertebrae separate, felt the tendons stretch, felt the muscles tear. Pain exploded through my nervous system, white hot and all-consuming. I tried to scream, but the crying head was sobbing so loud it drowned out everything. The sound filled my skull, rattling my teeth, and I couldn't hear my own voice. Something snapped, not broke, snapped into place, like a joint dislocating and then realigning wrong. I felt my neck stretch, skin pulling tight, cells dividing and multiplying at a rate that should have killed me. The pain shifted, became something else. Pressure, fullness. I was expanding, growing in a direction that shouldn't exist. I felt it forming, the second head, emerging from my neck, pushing through muscle and bone, unfurling like a flower. I could feel its thoughts, separate from mine, a different consciousness but connected, sharing the same blood, the same flesh. The pain faded. In its place came clarity, understanding. This was how they reproduce, not through birth or self-division, but through addition, through transformation. One became, two became more. I felt calm, grateful. The fear was gone, replaced by this deep, abiding peace. I understood now. I wasn't being destroyed. I was being completed. The closet door slid shut. We stood in the darkness, dressed in white, facing inward. And I felt it. The presence of others. Not just the woman who had taken me, but others. Behind her, behind them. A chain stretching back through years, maybe decades. All of us standing in closets, waiting in the quiet, breathing in the dark. I am not alone anymore. I will never be alone again. And when the next tenant moves in, when they hang their jackets and stack their shoes and close the door, I will wait. We will wait. The crying head will sob softly, endlessly. The smiling head will watch, patient and still. And when they finally open the door, when they see us standing there in our white dress, when they smell the rot and the sweetness, we will welcome them. We will help them understand. We will teach them how to become, because nobody should ever have to be alone.